What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today we're taking a look at the Rosecraft Blades Bowfin. This was my last pickup at Blade Show Atlanta, and so late in the show, in fact, that this didn't even make the haul video. That's because I actually left it at the show at my buddy Eddie's booth, OEG EDC, and he took it home and went ahead and mailed it to me. So huge shout out to him for making sure this got to me. But first thing you may notice about this is that this is a modern knife from Rosecraft Blades. Obviously they make plenty of modern knives, but at least on my channel I've mainly focused on their traditional lineup, so a bit of a rarity. But I did love the design. It's a Chase Snyder design, which I'm pretty sure this is my first of his designs, model RCM020, as you can see there on the back. Now this one just dropped on the Rosecraft website today, or I guess yesterday when you're seeing this video, and I haven't seen it pop up on online retailers yet, but I imagine that will happen in the next couple days. When it does, you'll be able to grab this for $70, so still somewhat of a budget knife. And the sort of defining feature for me of this knife is all of the different deployment methods makes for a very fidgety knife, and I think all of the different deployment methods are equally well executed, which I really appreciate. So your main one's going to be excuse me, that front flipper, and this works very well for me. Front flippers can be kind of hit or miss in terms of how easy they are for me to use because it's not my favorite deployment method, but this one feels very intuitive. I feel like I don't have to think about my finger placement. It just works. You can easily roll that over the top and deploy it 100% of the time. Now, I think the reason it works so well is that this kind of reminds me of a modern interpretation of a friction folder. You can see how much the tang of that blade is sticking up past the handle, and then it's well gemmed to kind of turn it into a mini friction folder, but more of a front flipper. And it's a little bit ironic because I'm not a huge fan of friction folders, but it gives you so much access to this and makes the point that you need to roll over that handle so just kind of easy to access that it just works. So I actually prefer the front flipper over any of the other deployment methods on this knife, which is pretty rare. Usually if I have thumb studs, that's going to be my preferred deployment method, but in this case I like the front flipper a little bit better. Now when it comes to the thumb studs, those are also very well executed. Want to point out the anodization on there because I do love that green. I think it pops very nicely next to those black micarta handles, and you can see just how much access you have to both of those studs. And so if you want to flick this open with your thumb, no problem whatsoever. If you'd like to flick it open with your middle finger, just as easy. And last but not least, we have the button lock, which you can also use for deployment. Now, when it comes to button locks, I rarely ever use them for deployment unless that's my only deployment method. I just tend to not find the action very satisfying when flicking open a button lock. You have to get the timing right. And so this works very well, just not going to be my go-to method, but if it is your go-to method, it works just as well as those other methods. And one thing you may have noticed is just how cleanly that drops once you press that button. It is on bearing, so really great action right out of the box, and also no lock stick, which was pretty surprising. Honestly, when I get a button lock, I've just come to expect a little bit of lock stick, and eventually it will wear itself out. Sometimes you have to disassemble it and just kind of clean it up, but most of the time it will just break in and that lock stick will go away. But pretty impressive that there was none out of the box. Now the other sort of defining feature for me is going to be the shape of it. It kind of fits the name very well, that Bowfin name, but also that curvature extends from the handle into our drop point blade, giving us just a ton of belly, so it's going to be great for chopping tasks. It has a downward pointed tip, so going to be great for those utility cuts, great for your pull through cuts. Really, really versatile blade shape, and absolutely love that about it. Now, one thing that may not be as obvious just seeing it in video is the size of it. It's a pretty large knife at 8.2 inches overall, meaning that we get 4.5 inches in the handle, so plenty of real estate to get all 4 fingers around it. Now, in this grip, I don't find it the most comfortable. This point here, as well as the point in the back of the knife, are poking into my index and my pinky. Not really a hot spot, but very noticeable. But then you have the finger choil, and this grip I find to be extremely comfortable. No hot spots, no points that I'm even feeling whatsoever, just kind of a perfect grip for my hand. And so when I first saw that finger choil, I thought it was a bit redundant on a knife of this size. Obviously we have that 4.5 inch handle that's going to fit 4 fingers for pretty much everyone except for the very largest of hands. but I do find it to be so much more comfortable in this forward grip in that finger choil that I'm really glad it was included. Now the trade-off with that, of course, is going to be our cutting edge. So we have a 3.7 inch blade, which is great for a knife of this size, but only 3.1 inches in cutting edge, which is a little bit less than you might normally expect for a 8.2 inch overall knife. Now for me, the trade-off's worth it. That's going to come down to preference for everyone. I prefer that finger choil and less cutting edge for the more comfortable ergos, but again, that's really going to come down to preference. But great looking blade as well. I already mentioned that drop point style blade. We have a partial flat grind. The thumb stud is out of that cutting path in line with the finger choil. Nice swedge that terminates a little bit early before that tip, so we get a nice thick tip for the extra added strength there. RPM 9 on the steel. Now that steel has been a little bit controversial lately if you follow knife steel news at all, and it's really been controversial because of how it was represented, more so than the quality of the steel. At $70, RPM 9 is still an excellent steel, but it was a little bit misrepresented by Artisan Cutlery, maybe unintentionally by their marketing department, just based on the elements and the fact that it is not a powder metallurgy. But I think Artisan handled it pretty well, so it's kind of blown over, and I think a lot of that's because it really wasn't about the quality, just how it was represented. But worth mentioning, I'm sure this was actually already in use long before that controversy, so way too late to pivot. And I don't even know if they would, because I don't think as many people cared about the controversy because of how it was handled than initially you might have thought. Now, in terms of the weight on this one, it's a larger knife, and so the weight does reflect that at 4.97 ounces. It is a little bit on the heavy side. You definitely feel that weight, but for a larger knife, it's not too bad overall. We have these black micarta handles, really well done. I like the look of them. They're soft and really nice texture, and they look great. They almost look like a G10. They're so pressed so tightly. But we do have that button lock again for our lockup. We have a deep carry pocket clip. This pocket clip's very nice as well, slides into the pants very easily. You can see pretty low profile on that one as well. Does leave a little bit out the pocket, but really not much at all. Could do without that Rosecraft logo on there. I don't like knife logos on the pocket clip just because it tells people what's in your pocket if they're familiar with the brand or if they look it up, but not really the end of the world either. That is reversible, no plug on there, which is kind of to be expected at a knife at this price point, but worth mentioning as well that there is no plug. We have the Rosecraft logo on the front, so pretty minimal billboarding on the front side. Flipping over to the back, we have Chase Snyder's maker's mark back here in the same place, don't mind that. The RCM020 model number indication there, and that's really it. Otherwise, no real jimping for your spine. You do have the jimping on the front flipper, but that disappears into the handle, so you're not really feeling that. So if you're a big jimping person, there really is none to speak of here. We have nested liners, which I like. It's kind of out of the way, can't see them. Barrel standoffs back here, so no backspacer, nice centered blade, and again, really great action, really versatile blade shape. Really liking this knife so far, but kind of an early look at it. This one just came in the mail earlier this week and figured I'd get a video on it since it just dropped online. But let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, or joining the channel as a member. They all help the channel out a ton, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.